Hey everyone, it's Aesah, and welcome to my video on popping off items. This is a mechanic that's been in TFT for a long time, but I haven't really seen any videos talking about how to use it, so I'll go into some details on some of the different ways you can save removers by popping off items correctly. So let's start with the basics. First of all, when you combine two units, of course, a unit can only hold 3 items, or it's really common with Thief's Gloves as well. It obviously can't hold items plus a Thief's Gloves. So if you combine these two units, what item is going to stay on your graves too? It's going to be whatever you put on your board. So if you combine the graves in this case, normally you're going to want your damage items, so you would put this graves on the bench, combine your graves, and then the Thief's Gloves would pop off. You could do it the other way around, depending on what your board is. You put the one with the Thief's Gloves on the board, you put this one on your bench, you combine them, your 2-star graves will have a Thief's Gloves. So what if they have other items, like let's say maybe you slammed some of these other things early game, and now you have these two graves for whatever reason. I'm not sure how you would end up in this situation, but if you did, if you combine these two, what would you keep? Again, it's going to prioritize the one on the board. So let's say you want to keep this Graves, you would put this one on the bench, and then your Graves 2 will always have Giant Slayer and Deathblade, and then when you combine them, you'll have a 50-50 chance of getting either Even Shroud or Bloodthirster. So, of course, you're probably going to want Bloodthirster for this unit. So you'll have at least a 50-50 chance of being able to save a remover. Because if you get Even Shroud, the Bloodthirster will just go to your bench, and then you'll just use a remover and then change it to a Bloodthirster. Components will always pop off in favor of full items. So let's say you had this in the early game and you slammed a bow, and then once again we have another Graves. Again, not entirely sure how you would get into this situation, but I guess this is more common. Like you might slam a bow for tempo, and then from Krugs you get dropped a full BT, but you don't want to use a remover. You could just wait until you get another Graves too. You don't even have to be playing this Graves, obviously. Like you'll just have a Graves on your bench. You build the Bloodthirster on your bench Graves, then you combine it, and it'll always pop the bow off. The bow will just go back to your item bench. So these are kind of like the basics of popping off items. They take priority over components. Again, it's really common with Thief's Gloves. I would say it's the most common situation because you're not just going to itemize two different graves a lot of the times. But there's a few other ways that this can come up. One really common thing is Zac is often going to be your best tank in the late game, but frequently you're not just going to have Zac 2 with blobs. You're going to have to work your way up. So if you're playing like a 5 amp board, it's very common that you might have a 2-star Nico with really strong tank items. Something like this, and then you have a Zac 1-star holding some utility items. But then once you upgrade the Zac and get a lot of blobs, you want to move the items. So again, what will happen a lot is you'll have a Zac on your bench. Once you find the third Zac in your shop, you can use one remover and put all these items on your bench Zac and then swap these two. So you put this Zac on the board, you put this Zac on your bench, and then once you combine it, again, it prioritizes the items on the board. So once you combine these, you'll have your 2-star Zac with these items. The Sunfire and Spark will go back to your item bench, and then you can move them to your Nico 2. So that's a way that you can save a remover. Oftentimes, you might be short of them in the late game if you don't use this technique. But normally swapping these would take 2 removers, but now you can do it with only 1 remover. Another thing you can do is sometimes you'll get a better item for a unit, and you know for sure you want that item on a unit. So I guess we'll just maybe we'll use Nico as an example, and let's say we have a Warmogs, a Stone Plate, and then let's say we had to put like a Bloodthirster on our Nico 1-star, and then off the carousel we build a real tank item. Let's just say we get a Steadfast Heart. We can have a chance of saving a remover by whenever we find our third Nico in the shop. I would only do this, by the way, if you're doing it on the same turn. I wouldn't want to go through player combats with a Steadfast Heart on the bench. But let's say you built this, and then you roll down, you find the third Nico in your shop. You put the steadfast heart here, and again, once you combine these two, you keep this one on the board, so your combined Nico will always have the steadfast heart, and then it'll get 2 items from here. So it's a little random. You might get the bloodthirst, so you have to use a remover anyway, but you have a chance of getting these two. I guess it's 2 out of 3 chance that you would have to use a remover. So most likely you'll stop to use one, but there's a chance you can save one this way. There's a couple set 14 specific ways you can use a remover as well. ExoTech items count as an item. So let's say you're playing a 7 ExoTech board, and this is going to be really common when you're itemizing a Jax 2 in the early game, or Mordekaiser, either one. So let's say in the early game, we built a Jax with a couple tank items, and our Exo items, let's just say we have 2 of them. So you could do this with only 3 ExoTech, but just for reference purpose of this example, let's say we have 7 ExoTech, so we have 3 ExoTech items, and we have a Sejuani 1 with some utility items again. So we have maybe like some Spark, Sunfire, even Shroud. These are kind of the items that we want on our off tank. So let's say we're in a situation like this. This is what our board looks like. Once we find the 2-star Sejuani in the shop, what we can do is we pop off all of these ExoTech items. Keep in mind, time is a valuable resource as well. Doing this entire maneuver, you're going to have to go from 7 ExoTech to 5. Or sorry, 7 to 2 ExoTech to get everything off. I guess you just bench these on a... Okay, never mind. You just have to bench 3 units. But anyway, doing this entire maneuver may take... If you're not comfortable with it, probably like half of your entire planning phase, maybe like 15 seconds. You have a 30-second planning phase. But yeah, once you find your Sejuani 2 in shop, you put all these ExoTech items on your bench. I'll just use this as my item bench for now. By benching these 3 units, and then what you can do is you'll put this Sejuani on your bench. You'll put your empty Sejuani on the board, and then you put all the ExoTech items on her, combine into Sejuani 2, and then these will go to your item bench, and now you can redistribute your items. You'll still have to use a remover on Jax here, but that way you can use only 1 remover instead of 2 removers, which is very valuable. I'm sure all of us have played games where we run out of removers. There's one last set specific thing I want to talk about, which is a Garen mod. If you use a Garen mod on a unit that already has an emblem on it, that will pop off the emblem. So this might be common in like Divinicore Zed, for example. If you have a Zed build, maybe something that looks like this, and then you have a Garen and a lot of Divinicore units. If you give Divinicore to Zed, this will just simply go back to your item bench, and then you can get another 3rd real item on Zed, which will make him a lot stronger because you'll still be getting the Divinicore bonus, but now you have a whole extra item. If you're playing this comp, you would generally want a 3rd item on your Zed anyway instead of the Divinicore spat, but if you're ever in this situation, it is useful to save a remover. One thing I do want to note is, I'm not sure if it works with every emblem, but I know some emblems give effects. For example, Marksman's Spat, or I guess like Rapid Fire is a good example, where it gives the user extra range. That's pretty noticeable. I'm sure if you've been playing recently, you've seen Rapid Fire Renekton, or even Zed. But let's say we Garen mod Zed with Rapid Fire, we can still put a Rapid Fire Spat on him, and that'll still work in the reverse direction, I think, just to not limit you from preventing you to taking advantage of the emblem bonuses if you want to do that. However, if we have this setup, our Zed is not modded, and now we give him Rapid Fire, it'll pop off. But we can put it back on to get the +2 range if we want. So keep that in mind. Oftentimes, of course, you're not going to want to do that because it's kind of a waste of a Garen mod. That's going to wrap it up for this video on popping off items. If you have any comments or questions, let me know in the Discord, and thanks for watching.